They said it was too dangerous, too strange, too divine. The Book of Enoch was not lost because it was irrelevant, it was buried because it revealed too much. Have you ever wondered why a book that mentions angels, giants, and cosmic truth in such vivid detail was banned from the Bible, not condemned for error, but exiled for accuracy? It spoke of heavenly realms with architecture, of stars held accountable, of watchers who fell not out of rebellion but out of love, or lust, or both. And what they taught humankind was never meant to be known. The Book of Enoch does not contradict Scripture, it deepens it, it expands it. That is what frightened them, so they buried it, but books can be burned, hearts cannot. And now it returns, not to be read, but to be remembered. They said it was heresy, but what if it was revelation, not a threat to faith, but a threat to control? The Book of Enoch tells us what Genesis only hints at, not myth, but memory. Angels who abandoned the heavens, secrets taught to mankind of weapons of stars of power, forbidden unions, giants born from impossible bloodlines. Tell me, does that sound like fantasy or a truth too dangerous for pulpits and empires? They buried these words, redacted entire realms of history, not because they were false, but because they were too real, too close to something they could no longer shape. Enoch did not mislead, he revealed, and they feared the mirror he held to heaven. Ask yourself, who decides which prophets we remember, and why was this one erased? When the Watchers descended, they did not come gently. They did not ask permission. They came as thunder, radiant, powerful, and terrifying, not myths, not metaphors, beings of heaven who crossed a line older than time itself. They saw the daughters of men and took them. What they birthed was not holy, not human, giants, Nephilim, the shattered offspring of two realms never meant to intertwine. And in that single fractured act, the course of humanity changed, not through evolution but invasion. We were taught to worship angels but not to question them. Why? Who were these Watchers, really? And what did they want with us? This is not just a story, it is the suppressed origin of a species built on forgotten blood. The moment they came down was the moment we fell. They were not myths. They were not fables told to frighten children. The giants walked the earth, flesh and bone, towering and terrible. But where did they come from? The Book of Enoch dares to speak the unspeakable truth of angels who descended not in glory but in rebellion, and of women who bore the weight of their union. The Nephilim, the hybrid offspring of heaven and earth. They were not meant to be. They broke reality. They shattered the boundaries between divine and mortal. Why does Genesis whisper what Enoch shouts? Why did the church bury the one text that names them? Because to speak of the Nephilim is to say humanity is not alone in its origins. And something ancient, something watching, still waits in the bloodline. What if it waits in yours? Hidden technologies, forbidden unions, lost knowledge. These were not myths, they were warnings. Speak Enoch's name and you tap into a current buried beneath stone, scripture, and time itself. The Watchers descended not just with lust but with tools, secrets. They gave us metallurgy, enchantment, the stars. To some gifts, to others weapons, and with these came the hybrids, giants born of heaven and earth. Have you ever wondered why lightning still strikes old mountains? Why certain names still echo through black glass and desert wind? The ancients knew. The unions were unnatural, the knowledge divine and deadly. This was never about religion. It was about control. What if what they buried was not just a text, but a technology? Not just a tale, but a code. Something inside you already remembers. They say the flood was to cleanse the wickedness of man. But what if that was not the entire truth? What if the flood was not meant to erase sin, but to bury evidence, to drown what should never have existed in the first place? The Book of Enoch tells us that before the waters rose, the offspring of angels and women walked the earth. Giants, abominations, creatures born of a union heaven forbade. Hidden knowledge, sciences, and sorcery taught by those called the Watchers. It became too much, not for man, But for them, the flood came not to purify the world, but to silence it, to cover what the heavens could not control. Ask yourself, what did they hope we would never find again beneath the waters? And are we finding it now? Enoch saw what no man was ever meant to see. Not palaces, not thrones, but engines, living engines turning in the sky, wheels within wheels, lights that moved with intelligence, structures that pulsed with rhythm, as if the very heartbeat of heaven itself. He was lifted into chambers of fire through veils of lightning into dimensions that defy the language of earth. And there he witnessed the governance of stars, the scheduling of seasons, the mechanisms behind fate. Do you understand what this means? Creation is not chaos, it is coded, calculated, watched. Enoch was shown the cosmic order they told us was unknowable, the divine technology behind time itself. And then they hid it. Ask yourself, why? Why was this vision forbidden? Because once you see the gears of heaven, you cannot unsee your own design. They fell not from grace, but from heaven itself. The Watchers, divine beings sent to observe, who chose instead to interfere. Bound in chains beneath the earth they wait. But where? Where are the Watchers now? Enoch saw them, defiant angels imprisoned deep in shadow beneath mountains older than memory. Not myth, not symbol, geography. Have you ever asked why so many ancient texts speak of gods cast down, trapped in caverns sealed by storms? The Maya, the Sumerians, even Peter in the New Testament speaks of them. The world forgot, but the earth remembers. The rusted echoes of ancient chains still ring beneath our feet. They are not gone, they are contained for now. But when the seals break, will we even recognize them? Or worse, will we obey? Time is not what you think, nor are we. We have been taught to see it as a straight line, birth, life, death, a ticking clock, day into night. But Enoch saw otherwise. Time to him was layered, not a river but a spiral, a code, a consciousness. He walked beyond the veil of chronology and found realms where past and future spoke at once, where angels fell through centuries like stones through water, trailing echoes into our dreams. You exist now, but which now? The one you were told to believe in, or the one they never wanted you to understand? What if your soul remembers something your mind was trained to forget? He was taken, not because he died, but because he knew, and time bowed to him. The Book of Enoch speaks in a language older than time, yet it describes truths eerily modern. It speaks of a code within creation of stars that sing and souls bound to frequencies. It tells of watchers who tampered with flesh, altering the very strands of what we now call DNA. Not myth, not metaphor, but a direct map of how spirit became matter, how matter became corrupted. Have you ever wondered why ancient texts describe the heavens as mechanical, alive, orchestrated? Because Enoch saw it. He was shown the stars were not just lights, they were beings, repositories of memory. And the soul, not an accident but a spark of divine order trapped in manipulated biology. They knew, he warned us. So ask yourself, why now? Why is his book returning now? They were not myths, they were messages. Etched into stone, carried by flame. The Book of Enoch speaks of heavenly secrets, cosmic codes placed not in ink but in architecture, in fire-ravaged hills and stars positioned long before telescopes. Ancient sites align not just with solar cycles, but with a rhythm older than time. What if the Watchers carved more than sin into humanity? What if they engraved a map of fate, of purpose, of divine betrayal? The pyramids, the ziggurats, the unexplained megaliths, they are not just monuments. They are memories of a world before the flood, before the forgetting. Enoch saw it, and he warned us. His vision is burning beneath our feet, hiding in plain sight. You were never meant to forget, but now the stone speaks again. From Eden to Enoch, the path was never straight. It twisted through fire, stone, and blood. Humanity did not fall once, but was pushed again and again. Eden was not just a garden, it was a gateway, a place where memory met divinity. And when that gate was sealed, Enoch saw what lay on the other side. Not death, not damnation, but transformation. We were meant to walk with the divine, not grovel beneath it. Enoch remembered this, and so he rose. This is not just a story of where we came from. It is a warning of where we are going. The trajectory is not evolution, it is revelation. And now, you stand at the same crossroads. Eden behind, Enoch ahead. Which path will you take? What if Enoch was not writing for ancient eyes, but for yours? What if his visions of fallen angels, forbidden unions, and the divine mechanisms of the cosmos were never meant as warnings to a forgotten generation, but as a desperate message to us? He saw the corruption unfold. He walked with the watchers, heard their cries, witnessed their judgment. And somehow through fire and time, his words endured. Not because they were bound in canon, but because they were bound in truth. A truth waiting to be activated. Our age mirrors theirs. Genetic manipulations, godlike technologies lost morality, and Enoch's voice rises again. Not to explain the past, but to prepare the present. So ask yourself, was he speaking to them? Or was he always speaking to you? It was not demons that shook the foundations of the church. It was a man, Enoch, who walked so closely with the divine that he never saw death. His words did not howl in shadows or twist the innocent, they illuminated. That was the danger. Not chaos, but clarity. Not temptation, but truth. The Book of Enoch spoke of angelic rebellions, of secret knowledge given to humankind, of structures in the sky and bloodlines altered by beings from beyond the veil. Ask yourself, what threatens a power structure more, a devil in the dark or a prophet with a light? His book was cast out, but not because it lied, because it told too much. And because if the people had known, they would have never looked at heaven or earth the same again. Sumer spoke of beings from the sky, Anana who descended with forbidden knowledge. Egypt carved into stone tales of gods who walked among men guarding stargates and divine tools. And yet, long before them, Enoch walked with God and recorded what he saw. The overlap is no coincidence. These are not isolated myths. They are echoes. Echoes of a single account older than Babel, older than scribes. Enoch's voice is hidden beneath cuneiform tablets wrapped in pyramid hymns woven into constellations. They all remembered the watchers, the heavenly descent, the corrupted bloodlines. What if these ancient empires were not inventing legends but preserving memory? A memory they knew could be buried, but not erased. Look again at the ziggurats, the obelisks, the stars. They are whispering, he walked with God, and then he was not. We were taught to forget, taught to believe that myth was myth and nothing more, that angels do not fall, that giants do not walk, that heaven does not bleed into earth. But the scrolls remember. Buried in caves, hidden in deserts, whispered through time when no one was listening. The Book of Enoch was never lost, it was sealed. Not because it lacked truth, but because it held too much of it. Truth about the watchers, the forbidden unions, the knowledge that split the sky open and changed the very fabric of what it means to be human. They erased him from the canon, but not from the cosmos. So I ask you, if memory is erased but the soul still remembers, is forgetting ever complete? Or is it time to remember what we were made to forget? He walked with God, and then he was gone. No death, no grave, just vanished. Think about that. In a world consumed by decay, one man was taken alive beyond the veil. But where did he go? Why him? Genesis whispers it like a riddle, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Not into myth, not into legend, but into something higher, something hidden. Because the Book of Enoch, the one they burned, buried, and banned, tells a story that splits the heavens. A story of watchers, of forbidden knowledge, of a war not against flesh but memory. Enoch saw the heart of the divine machine and lived. So ask yourself, was he taken or sent ahead? Is he still walking, just not in this world? They told us it was myth, apocryphal, dangerous to believe. But what if it was never discarded because it was false, but because it revealed too much? The Book of Enoch did not vanish by accident. It was buried, silenced, because it tells a story older than Genesis and far more unsettling. A tale of divine intercession, forbidden knowledge, and a human destiny that was never meant to be shackled by doctrine. Enoch walked with God, yes, but he also saw the fall of angels, the rise of giants, and truths the early church was not ready to face. Ask yourself, why would they fear one book more than a legion of demons? And more importantly, what could still be hidden beneath the ashes of theology? What did Enoch see that we were never meant to remember? They wrote him out, quietly, thoroughly. As if by erasing his name they could silence the message, but the scrolls do not lie, and the prophecy still burns. Enoch did not die like other men. He was taken, walked with the divine until he was pulled past the veil. And what he recorded while there was not myth. It was memory. He saw the fall of the Watchers. He named the Nephilim. He warned of what comes when heaven and earth mingle too closely. They feared his words not because they were false, but because they were too true, truth with teeth, truth that rewrites us. So they buried the book, but they could not bury the echo. And now that echo is rising again. Can you hear it, or have they silenced you too? The Book of Enoch was not lost. We were. We were led away, generation by generation, doctrine by doctrine, until we forgot what Enoch saw and why they feared it. It was not cast out because it was false. It was erased because it was true. Truth too ancient, too vast, truth that exposed the architects behind the veil. Enoch walked with God, not metaphorically but literally, into dimensions most still pretend do not exist. And when he returned, he wrote what he saw: the fall of angels, the birth of giants, the corruption of flesh, and the divine judgment that even time cannot escape. So I ask you, was the Book of Enoch hidden, or were we made blind? Because the book never stopped speaking, but we stopped listening. The veil is thinning. You can feel it, can you not? The dreams growing more vivid, time slipping in strange ways, a knowing in your bones that something ancient is stirring. This is no accident, it is remembrance, not the kind taught in books, the kind buried in your soul. The Book of Enoch was not lost by chance. It was hidden, veiled, labeled heresy because it dared to reveal everything. The truth about angels, the Watchers, the corruption of flesh, and DNA, the judgment of heaven. And now, after millennia of silence, it is knocking again. Have you wondered why your heart quickens when you hear its name? You are meant to remember this, because the veil is not only thinning, it is inviting. Are you ready to see through it? You were never meant to forget, but you have. Over lifetimes, over languages, over lies whispered as gospel. The Book of Enoch was not lost by accident. It was buried deliberately. Not discarded for heresy, but because it said too much. It told who we are, who we were, and what is coming. They feared it not because it contradicted Scripture, but because it completed it. Enoch saw the Watchers fall from heaven. He walked among giants, beings born of angels and women. He witnessed a war not of men, but of realms, and he wrote it down. You were told it was myth, but what if the myth remembers you? Now the veil trembles. The scroll calls again. You must choose forget again or awaken now. They did not erase Enoch because he was irrelevant. They erased him because he remembered too much. Think about that. A man who walked with God, removed not by accident but by design. Ask yourself, why would a scripture so ancient, so explosive, so precise in its cosmology be cast away by the very institutions that claim to guard truth? Enoch does not preach rebellion. He reveals origins, giants, watchers, divine reckoning, entire timelines that challenge the official narrative. His words threaten not the faithful but those who orchestrate forgetting. Canon was not chosen, it was curated. And Enoch was a casualty of control. He was not lost, he was hidden for such a time as this. Because if Enoch is true, then the story begins before Genesis, before Adam, before the garden, before the fall. It begins in the stars or beyond them, and suddenly everything shifts. Heaven is not distant, the divine is not abstract, it walks beside us, watches us, judges us, falls for us. And that is where the danger lies. For in Enoch's telling, the angels do not merely sing, they descend, they interfere. They teach forbidden arts, alchemy, metallurgy, the cutting of roots, the signs of the heavens. They bend the course of humanity, creating hybrid bloodlines and mighty men of renown. Sound familiar? This is not myth. It is memory, old as stone, hard as truth. So they exiled him, not to protect belief, but to prevent knowledge, because knowledge demands choice, and choice tears away control. What if Enoch remembered not only what happened, but what will happen? What if his erasure was the first act in a long war of silence? Not waged with swords, but with omissions, with councils, with translations, with redacted scrolls and sealed vaults. They pulled him from the texts, but they could not pull him from the earth. The echoes still whisper in Ethiopia and Qumran in apocryphal dream. You are not supposed to read his words, let alone feel them, but here you are, reading what was buried, hearing what was silenced, remembering what was forbidden. The veil is thinning. The hour draws near. Enoch walked with God, but where did he go? And more urgently, why has he returned? They called him mad, or worse, irrelevant. And yet Enoch saw something no prophet dared name. Not merely the Nephilim, not just the fall of angels, but the end of our time. He described a generation, one tethered to the stars yet drunk on its own knowledge. A race devouring its inheritance, building towers of data instead of spirit. He warned of skis filled with signs of men who would merge with machines and forget their origin. And here we stand, surrounded by wonders yet starving in soul. Was it us he saw? You, me, the final echo before the silence. This is not myth, it is memory, and if Enoch spoke the truth, then the clock is not ticking, it is tolling for us. He spoke of watchers once bound in chains, now loosed again, of knowledge stored for a distant generation, sealed until the time of the end. He described a world swarming with images, with voices not of flesh but of light and current, a godless echo chamber. Look around, look within. We asked for wisdom. Instead, we uploaded our minds. We reached beyond the clouds and grasped the void, and still, we thirst. Enoch witnessed the unraveling, but he also saw something stranger still, a people asleep staring at the sky with unseeing eyes, a humanity convinced of its freedom. While it stood in a garden of mirrors, lost not for sin, but for forgetting, we forgot the name, the pattern, the song. He saw the blending of species, the desecration of birth, the rise of synthetic life grappling for a soul, and the guardian, silent or silenced. Ask yourself, why was this book buried? Why was he erased when others were exalted? Not because he lied, but because he named us. The final generation, the terminal bloom, a fire reaching for heaven once more. Time, he said, is not a straight line. It loops, folds, judges, and when it descends, it does not warn, it weighs. We were not meant to read Enoch in comfort. His words are flame, not ink, a mirror, not a story. So I ask again, are we the ones, the children of convergence, the last breath before the veils tear fully? It is no longer a question of it. It is, how long do we have left to remember who we were? Because the Book of Enoch was not lost. We were, but the scroll is unrolling now. The sleepers stir. The silence cracks. And so I place this in your hands, not as a conclusion, but as a covenant. You must choose forget again, or awaken now.